All right, Bethany, you've got your own story.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was that girl that grew up in youth group and loved the Lord from a young age and grew up in church. And as I hit my teenage years, my 20s, life sometimes hands you disappointments and things that you thought God was going to do for you because you wanted it were going to happen that way, and it didn't quite. And I really became somewhat jaded. And I began to make more selfish decisions and thinking that I could maybe control my life better than God.
I can run the universe better.
I can do this, and it's easier.
I can run my universe better.
Right. Didn't really work that well.
What were the disappointments?
You know, disappointments and things that might not seem significant to other people, but to me it was things that I was passionate about, that I thought at that time I was supposed to walk into those situations and they were supposed to happen, and relationships I thought might end up turning to something and didn't. And I realize now that God had greater things for me, and I realize...
Just saying, you gotta volunteer.
You know, but that disappointment and being very short-sighted can really push us to be selfish and make ungodly, selfish decisions. And that's really where I was for a good portion of my teens and 20s. I look back now on my life and I see a lot of my ungodly decisions really led me into being single and pregnant in my early 20s. And I realized at that point that I could no longer be selfish because it was going to affect, of course it was already affecting others, but it hit home for me. I had a defining moment. I look back and I think of February 14th, which was Valentine's Day. It was a Saturday morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I had my first ultrasound. And there I walk into this empty room, you know, just by myself with the ultrasound tech. And I saw for the first time my daughter's little beating heart. And I had this defining moment as I saw in the emptiness of the room, I felt the fullness of the love of God for me. And I just felt that he wrapped my heart and her heart and his heart and just called me really back to himself. And that night, I went home that very night, and God gave me Psalm 34:5, which says, "They looked to him and were radiant, and their faces were never covered with shame." And actually, that's what the Radiance Foundation is predicated upon. But for me, it was so personal because it didn't matter the shame of my yesterday decisions, ungodly and selfish as they were. But when God infuses you with his glory becomes what people see. And it's not shame anymore. And I always wanted for my child and for my life to walk in that. And I know that having felt that transformation personally and having walked through that on my own, that sort of has been the impetus for getting back into the will of God for my life.